let's get right into it. We're about to deconstruct the hidden mechanics of emotional control. And I'm not talking about suppression or avoidance. Those are weak tactics. No, this is a system. It's a protocol for seizing control right at the neurological level. What you're about to learn is the operational difference between being a passenger in your own mind and being the pilot.
The greatest power you can ever hold is the one you seize from your own automatic feelings. Just let that sink in for a second. This isn't about becoming unfeeling or turning into a robot. It's about understanding that your feelings are just raw data. They are not direct commands. You see, real power isn't the absence of emotion. It's the skillful use of that emotional information to execute a strategy.
So here's our roadmap. First, we're going to redefine what the power in feeling actually means. Then we'll pull back the curtain on the reactivity trap that keeps so many people stuck. After that, we'll install the system itself, the Cognitive Gap Protocol, and look at the science of hacking the primal brain. And we'll wrap up with the tactical, two-part intervention you can use right away, and the final, crucial insight: volatility is vulnerability.
All right, let's start by tearing down a really flawed but common belief. This idea that being strong means feeling less. You know, we're always told to just power through it, to ignore what's going on inside. But that's a total misunderstanding of our own biology. The paradox here is that the very thing that makes us reactive, our emotions, can actually become our greatest source of power. But only if we completely change how we relate to it.
So on the left, you've got the illusion of strength. This is trying to suppress your emotions, avoid them, pretend they're not there. Look, that is a losing battle against your own brain. It just burns up massive amounts of mental energy. And you know what? It always fails, usually at the worst possible time. But on the right, that's where true power is. It's the ability to observe the emotional data as it comes up, analyze it without judgment, and then form a strategic response. It's a huge shift from being a victim of your feelings to being a strategist who uses them.
And this leads us straight into a critical vulnerability: the reactivity trap. Now listen, this isn't some personal failing, it's a systemic breakdown. When you don't have a protocol for managing your internal state, you are living in a chronic state of internal vulnerability. And this is where control is lost, not to someone or something outside, but to your own automatic, unexamined reactions.
And you know this feeling. It's that feeling of being hijacked. One minute you're calm, you're rational, and the next, some trigger, an email, a comment, a memory, and bam! A surge of heat, tension, and irrational thought just floods your system. You know the response is wrong, you know it's not going to help, but you feel totally powerless to stop it. In that moment, you are no longer in command. You are just reacting to the alarm bells of your primal brain.
Now, this internal vulnerability, it has really high-stakes consequences. When your emotions are running high, your ability to think clearly just tanks, leading to decision paralysis. You can't think straight, so you do nothing at all. Over time, this creates this deep sense of helplessness, this belief that you just can't trust yourself when the pressure's on. And here's the most dangerous part. It makes you highly susceptible to external manipulation. People who understand emotional triggers can easily use your fear, your anger, your guilt to get you to do what they want. And it all adds up to a life that's not defined by your values, but by a series of chaotic, reactive choices you made when you were overwhelmed.
So how do we escape this trap? We install a new system. This is the Cognitive Gap Protocol, and it is the core mechanism for seizing control. Now, this isn't a mindset or some vague philosophy. It's a repeatable, mechanical process for creating space between a stimulus and your response. And that space is where all your power is.
Let's be really clear about what this is: your limbic system, your emotional brain. It's incredibly fast, totally automatic, and it's primal. It fires off reactions in milliseconds. Your prefrontal cortex, on the other hand, your rational brain, that's slower, more deliberate, more analytical. The cognitive gap is the space you intentionally create between these two systems. It's a pause, it's a buffer zone, where you literally intercept the automatic signal from your emotional brain before it turns into an automatic action.
So here's how the protocol flows. It starts with a trigger event. Instantly, you get the emotional surge. That's the amygdala hijack. Now here is the leverage point. Step 3, mindful labeling. Instead of getting swept away by the feeling, your prefrontal cortex steps in to observe it and name it. You just say to yourself, "This is anger," or "I am observing anxiety." That simple act kicks off step 4, decoupling. You separate the feeling from the urge to act. The emotion is no longer a command, it's just information. And this creates the space for step 5, the strategic choice. Now you can choose a response that actually aligns with your long-term goals, not one that just satisfies a fleeting emotional impulse. This is the exact moment control shifts back to you. And this mental shift, this is everything. The whole trap closes on you when you let an emotion define your identity. The statement, "I am afraid," is an identity statement. It means the fear is you, and you are the fear. You're fused with it. But the statement, "I am observing fear," well, that's a data statement. It positions you as the conscious observer of a temporary internal event. You are not the fear, you are the one watching it. And just like that, the feeling is no longer a command to be obeyed, it's just a data point to be considered. This one little shift in perspective is the foundation of the entire system.
Now, this isn't just some clever mind game. The protocol works because it directly exploits the way your brain is actually wired. We're effectively using our conscious mind to regulate our primal mind. So let's take a look at the science behind this internal hack.
The psychological tool we're using here actually has a name. It's called Cognitive Reappraisal. It's a well-researched process where you actively change the meaning of an emotional event, which then changes your emotional response to it. When you label an emotion, you are fundamentally reinterpreting it. You're transforming it from a threat you have to react to into just an object to be analyzed.
And what I find so fascinating is how this actually works on a neurological level. When you use your prefrontal cortex to find the right word, frustration, anxiety, betrayal, you're engaging the language centers of your brain. And this act of searching for and applying that label, it imposes what's called a cognitive load. It literally draws resources away from the amygdala, the brain's alarm system, and that dampens its signal. You are using one part of your brain to turn down the volume on another. That is the hack.
The strategic advantages you get from mastering this are just immense. First, it buys you time, that crucial gap that lets your rational brain get back online. And what that does is it removes the target for manipulators. If you don't automatically react to fear or guilt, those emotional levers just don't work on you anymore. This frees you from being dependent on what other people think, letting you operate from your own internal compass. And maybe most importantly, it preserves your cognitive resources. When everyone else is panicking and losing their ability to think clearly, you stay calm, focused, and completely capable of making smart strategic decisions. Okay, so we've got the theory, we've got the strategy, now let's get tactical. What do you do in the exact moment an emotional surge hits? This requires a clear, two-part intervention that hits both your body and your mind at the same time. Step 1 is all about signal recognition. You have to become an expert at noticing the very first physical symptoms of an emotional surge. You know what I mean? That rush of heat in your chest, the way your jaw tightens, your breath getting shallow, that sudden flood of racing thoughts. These are your early warning signs. The second you detect them, you know it's time to deploy the protocol. The intervention is a two-pronged attack. First, you deal with the physical side. You immediately use the 4-7-8 breathing technique. That's a 4-second inhale through your nose, a 7-second hold, and an 8-second exhale through your mouth. Just doing that a couple of times physically lowers your heart rate and tells your nervous system you're safe, which actively counters the amygdala's alarm. At the exact same time, you deploy the cognitive intervention. You execute mindful labeling. You just state, internally, I am observing a surge of anger in my chest and shoulders. Get specific. This 1-2 punch is the immediate countermeasure that neutralizes the hijack.
Now, once you've created that bit of space, you have to make a strategic choice. And the most powerful way to do this is to ask yourself one specific question. Does reacting impulsively align with my long-term goal? Phrasing it exactly like that forces you out of that subjective, emotional fog and into the role of an objective strategist. And let's be honest, the answer is almost always no. And this builds that final wall between feeling and action.
Okay, let's distill this whole protocol down to its absolute core doctrine. We've gone from understanding the reactivity trap to installing the protocol and learning the tactics, and it all leads to one single governing principle. If you remember only one thing from all of this, let it be this. Volatility is vulnerability. It's that simple. When your internal state is all over the place, you're unpredictable, you're easy to manipulate, and you're just leaking mental energy. So the opposite has to be true. Stability is the most valuable power resource you have. Someone who can maintain internal calm and clear thinking under pressure has a massive advantage in literally any situation. And this stability isn't some passive thing. It's an active, disciplined skill that you build using this protocol. And that brings us to our final takeaway, the mental weapon you can carry with you from this day forward. The distance between a trigger and your response is the space where all power resides. Your job is to create that distance, to widen that gap, and to own the space within it. That, right there, is the essence of emotional self-mastery.